Number 1. Don't forget to turn on the lights. The story is about a young college girl who was studying late every night and thus was spending more time in the library rather than a dorm room. One night she realized that she had forgotten something in her room and decided to go back and fetch it. Upon reaching her dorm room, she opened the door and found the room completely dark, but figured that maybe her roommate was either asleep or out studying like her. Not wanting to disturb her roommate in case she was asleep, she left the light off, and very carefully, without making any noise, she grabbed what she needed and went back to the library. Upon returning to her room after a nighted marathon studying, she found her roommate lying cold on the floor with a slit throat. But the worst part was the message that she found written with lipstick on the bathroom mirror, which read, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" Number 2. Footprints in the snow. This creepypasta story revolves around a teenage girl who was home alone with her little sister one day while her parents were out of town for some work. After watching some television with her sister, she sent her to bed and came back down to watch some more TV. Eventually, she got bored of changing the channels and not finding anything interesting to watch, so she turned off the TV and rolled up in her blanket on the couch and watched the snow fall through the large sliding glass window in the living room. She had only been watching the snow fall for a few minutes when she saw a man walking towards the window. She saw him pull out something shiny out of his coat and she hid under her blanket in terror. After a while, she peeped out of the blanket to see and noticed that the man was gone. She immediately walked towards the phone and called the police, who rushed to the scene almost quickly to investigate the scene. Upon analyzing the premises, there were two things they observed. 1. There were no footprints on the snow outside, and looking at the rate of snowfall, there was no way that the footprints could be covered up so quickly. Secondly, upon investigating the room inside, they discovered wet footprints on the carpet that led straight to the couch where the girl had been sitting. The madman had been behind her the whole time she was watching TV, and what she saw was the reflection of the man on the sliding glass window. Number 3. Through the keyhole. A man checks into a hotel one night. While checking in, the woman at the front desk hands him the key to his room and tells him that on the way to his room is a room that has no number and that it was always locked and used for storage purposes. She warns him to stay away from the room without asking any questions. The man, obviously intrigued, goes straight to his room silently. He does spot the locked room on his way, but chooses to ignore it. But by the second night, the man's curiosity grows deeper and he decides to peep into the locked room through the keyhole. The room was locked, as the woman at the front desk has told him. From the keyhole, the room looks like a normal hotel room similar to his own room. But as his eyes scan the room through the keyhole, he spots an old, almost pale woman sitting silently in the corner of the room with her head leaning against the wall. Confused, the man returns to his room. The third night, the man becomes even more curious about what he saw the previous night, and his curiosity leads him to the unnumbered room again. As he looks through the keyhole, all he can see is the color red, a very deep shaded red. Maybe the woman had suspected that someone was spying on her, so she might have blocked the keyhole. The man decides to inquire about the room from the woman at the front desk. She let out a big sigh and asked him if he had peeped through the keyhole. After he confirmed it, she decided to tell him the whole story. Many years ago, a man murdered his wife in the same room, and our ghost now haunts it. Her ghost had been described as very pale, except for her eyes, which were bloodshot red. Number 4. The lost child. The young woman was walking down the street on a normal spring day when she noticed a child sitting in the corner and crying. She went up to her and asked what was wrong. The little girl told her that she was lost. Sniffling, the girl asked her if she could help her find her way home. Feeling sorry for the girl, the young woman agreed to help her and set out with her to find her way back home. Luckily, the girl knew her address and had a general idea of where her home was. Soon, they reached her home. The front door was locked, and since the girl was too short to reach the doorbell, she asked the woman to ring it for her. The woman pressed the doorbell without a second thought. But, as soon as the woman pressed the bell, she felt a powerful shock course through her body. It knocked her out cold, and she woke up hours later only to find herself completely naked and surrounded by used condoms. The house she was in was empty, her rapists were long gone, and the child was nowhere to be seen. Number 5. The suicidal boyfriend. Dating back to the 1960s, this story is about a girlfriend and her boyfriend, both college students, who were making out in their car. They had parked the car near the forest of Ramfield, Paris, so that nobody saw them. When they were finished, the boy walked out of the car to get some fresh air and to light up a cigarette, while the girl waited for him in the safety of the car. After waiting for 5 minutes, the girl got out of the car to look for her boyfriend. Suddenly, she saw a man in the shadows. Frightened, she went back to her car to drive away. But as she did that, she heard a faint squeak, followed by several more squeaks. This continued for a few seconds, until the girl decided that she couldn't take it anymore and that she had to drive away. She hit the gas pedal as hard as she could, but the car won't move. Someone had tied a rope from the bumper of the car to a nearby tree. Finally, the girl slammed on the gas hard again and heard a loud scream. She got out of the car only to realize that her boyfriend was hanging from the tree, and the squeaky noises she heard were made by his shoes scraping across the top of the car. Number 6. The gas station attendant. It was late and a young woman was driving through an unfamiliar area of the country one night. Her car was old and unreliable, and soon she realized that she had to make a stop for gas. Luckily, she came across a gas station in a few minutes. The gas station was old-fashioned, the kind with an attendant who comes out to pump the gas. But something about the gas station set alarm bells ringing in her head. Afraid that she might not find another gas station soon, she reluctantly pulled in and asked the attendant to fill up the tank. The attendant seemed nervous as he filled up the tank, but finished his job and moved towards her car window for payment. She gave him a $20 bill, and he examined it carefully and told her that the bill was a counterfeit or a fake. At that point, the alarm bells in the girl's head started ringing vigorously. The attendant explained that he would have to take her back to his office in order to call his manager about the counterfeit bill, as it had to be reported to the bank. Once he convinced the woman to come to his office with him, he told her that the bill wasn't a counterfeit and that he had got her out of her car because there was a man with a hatchet hiding in the back seat. Number 7. The choking Oberman. This story is from Sydney, Australia, that tells about a bizarre incident about a choking Oberman. One night, a couple, who had been out for a few drinks, came back home only to find their dog choking in the living room. The man panicked and fainted, but the woman somehow gathered all her courage and rang her vet and arranged to drop off her dog at the vet clinic. After leaving her dog at the vet clinic, the woman came home and put her husband to bed. It took her a while to do this. In the meantime, the phone rang. She hurried to pick it up. The vet screams hysterically and tells her to leave the house with her husband immediately. So clueless of what was going on, a woman did as she was told and left her home with her husband in a hurry. As they were hurrying down the staircase, they find a group of policemen running inside the house along with the vet. When the woman asked what the problem was, the vet told her that the dog was choking on a man's finger and that the intruder might still be present in their house. Soon enough, the police found the finger's owner lying unconscious in the bedroom. He had apparently snuck into their house for robbing them. Number 8. The unfortunate Cody incident. This horrifying tale begins on a cold winter night when a couple were holding a christening party in their home for their newborn baby. Soon, the guests started to arrive, and as they did, some of the guests tossed their coats onto the bed that was near the main living room. It started with a few coats, but later everyone added theirs to the pile. After all the guests arrived and the party was in full swing, the parents decided that it was time to introduce their newborn baby to the guests. So the mother walked over to the bed where she had left the baby to sleep, only to scream in horror when she found her little bundle had accidentally smothered under the towering pile of coats. Number 9. Jeff the Killer. This story is about a little boy named Jeff who just moved into his new home. The day he moved in, he was invited to a neighbor's birthday party. So he decided to take his little brother Lou along with him. But when Jeff and Lou were waiting at a bus stop, out of nowhere they were attacked by 3 teenagers. Jeff managed to defend himself, and the teenagers were found on the street with broken arms and knife wounds. Jeff suddenly realized that he enjoyed inflicting pain on others. It was a feeling that he always had, but it became stronger when he was provoked. One night, Jeff's mother was awakened by the sound of someone crying in the bathroom. As she opened the door to see what was wrong, she was shocked to see that Jeff had somehow permanently carved a smile on his face with a blade, and he had also managed to cut off his eyelids so that he could never sleep. Traumatized by what she saw, Jeff's mother ran towards her room to wake up her husband. But she was stopped cold by her Jeff, who was standing in the doorway with a knife clutched in his hands. "Mommy, you lied," was the last thing they ever heard. With his parents now dead, Jeff slowly moved towards his brother's room. Lou was already awakened up by the sounds in the house. He chose to go back to sleep by tucking his blanket tight over his face out of fright. But he suddenly saw his brother, Jeff, clamp his hands over his mouth and felt a warm blade thrust into his stomach. Lou tried to escape his brother's strong grip, but it was already too late. "Shhhhhhhhh," Jeff said. Just go to sleep. Jeff was never seen again, but legend has it that Jeff is still out there, waiting. Number 10. Where the bad kids go. It seems like creepy shows have been swarming silly all over the planet. This Another Story is also about a children's show that used to air during wartime Lebanon. The photographer decided to find out more about this childhood memory as something seemed to be off about the show. That's how he remembered it to be. From what he recalls about the show, he remembers half of it relying on very graphic imagery and scare tactics to keep kids from misbehaving. He always thought the show aimed towards keeping children in check of their bad habits, as there was always a moral at the end of every episode, such as bad kids stay up late and bad kids steal food from the fridge at night. But there was one thing that the photographer remembered the most about the show: the way it always ended. The closing scene of every episode was the same every single time. The camera would slowly zoom in on an old rusted iron door, and as it got closer, one could hear screams. As the camera got closer, the screaming got louder and fiercer. When the screaming couldn't get any worse, an Arabic text would pop up on the screen which read, "That's where bad kids go." And the episode would end. The photographer was so confused with all of this that he set out on a quest to find out the door, the creepy door. Luckily, he somehow managed to track down the studio where the show was filmed. The place looked like it had been abandoned for ages, and there among the ruins was the rusted door, the same door that would show up at the end of every episode. He then discovered that beyond the door was a small room covered with traces of blood, feces and bones. What scared him to death was a small microphone that hung from the middle of the room.